All right, let's talk
Absolutely.
about another team who seems like has been in a rebuild forever. People like to make jokes to say this is the minor league team of the MLB. Another one that loves to get picked on for their owner, not afraid to spend any money. I feel like I can go on and on about the Pittsburgh Pirates, and I know a lot of people who are fans of the Pirates and who follow us on other platforms will probably agree as well. But the Pittsburgh Pirates actually made some additions in the free agency this year, and they are significant compared to years past. Let's put it there. I think that's a fair way to say it. It's significant compared to years past. They add a guy like Rich Hill, who is going to be able to probably apply for AARP this year. Carlos Santana comes in to a team that could be a really interesting pick. I don't know. It could be good, could be not. I mean, we'll
Could
see
be
that one.
Yep.
Yeah, that one's a could be, right? Vincent Vasquez, he's a good bullpen piece. He has had his moments. Jarlin Garcia, and also another good piece. And then Austin Hedges as well. I thought that one was actually a really interesting pickup with all the needs for catchers in this offseason. Austin Hedges moves to Pittsburgh. He's probably the worst offensive catcher in all of baseball, but one of the best defensive catchers in all of baseball. He goes over to the Pirates system. That could be something good for the young pitching core of Pittsburgh. However, I just found that one really interesting. That was the additions in free agency. Now, I got to tell you about this blockbuster trade they make. They go get this guy named G-Man Choi from Tampa Bay. All right. Obviously, we talk about the trading away Kevin Newman. He goes to Cincinnati. And then they also get Connor Joe from Colorado, who now they got G-Man Choi and Connor Joe on the same team. I mean, if you wanted to get anything trending, if you wanted to get some hype going on your squad, you got G-Man Choi and you got Connor Joe. So you're going to be just fine, Pittsburgh. But I know you got some thoughts about G-Man Choi and your thoughts here. What do you think about Pittsburgh so far with their offseason? I'm actually kind of surprised, and I'm a little optimistic, if you will.
Yeah, I wish I had something sort of new to say about about the Pirates, because I feel like you said, it feels like it's been the same storyline year after year after year. Now Ben Cherington is kind of flipping things a little bit and actually, making moves. Again, no blockbusters or anything like that. And maybe, again, this is asset collection. Ben Cherington, one thing he's very good at is building a farm system. And, and he had no small role in rebuilding Toronto's system just before he went to Pittsburgh. So I think, maybe there's some asset building, but maybe not. Maybe, just maybe, there's a bit of, the division isn't as strong as it has been. Maybe there's some hope they can challenge for a wild card spot. I doubt it. But I think that if you look at those moves, like the first base is really interesting to me. G-Man Choi is no small addition to. I would love to have him on my team, even though playing for the Rays, I watched him, and I told you this little story before we went on air, but I might as well tell everybody. I actually have a respect for G-Man Choi that makes me hate him. Playing for the Rays, playing for the division rival, but he, in a game as a joke, he switch hit against the Blue Jays, and I believe on the second pitch, hit it out as a joke, right? Like, this is like, the bat to ball skill is incredible. He's got power, great defensive first baseman. So, this is not a small move for the Pirates. A championship team could do very well, as the Rays have done with G-Man Choi at first base, right? So this is not small for them. And Connor Joe will play the outfield. And then, if they mix in some DH time, maybe Choi gets some DH time as well. But switch hitter with some power, great contact skill, and just like, I hate using the term because I feel like it's cliche at this point, but he's a professional hitter, right? Like, he knows what he's doing in there. And that's a big addition for the Pirates, I think.
Yeah, and you got to think that they're not done making moves, and it might not be their choice. I think that they have something that they have to take care of, some unfinished business, and that's Bryan Reynolds. And he did, if we don't know, in this offseason, he did request a trade. There was a lot of talk of saying he might get moved in the trade deadline last year. That never happened. I think it looked like he wanted that to happen because he requested a trade this offseason. There has been some rumors swirling around about him possibly moving to Miami, him possibly going to a team like New York. It looks like Pittsburgh is looking for an arm to get back into the mix, and I think
a leg.
And yep, arm and a leg. It looks like that would be, and it's true. It looks like they're looking for a lot for Bryan Reynolds, and it's hard to
Yeah.
disagree with them because if you're, he's a great player. He was an
Mhm.
all-star caliber player. Why would you want to get rid of a guy who really, I'm sure that they were trying to build around, and that's just not in their favor. However, if they got to move him, it seems like that's what's going to happen eventually. I'm sure that we're going to hear that happen before spring training. Would be surprised if we hear that happen before March starts. But what's your thoughts about Bryan Reynolds? Where do you see him going? And what do you think that they could possibly get back in return?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's not when you first hear that a player is requesting a trade, especially from a team like Pittsburgh, it's like, okay, the player believes that the team is trash and they're not going anywhere, so they don't want to play there. And that may not necessarily be true. For all we know, Bryan Reynolds is saying, okay, look, the context of our team means I'm probably going to be traded at some point. I would rather you do that in the offseason so I can move my family, get everything sorted, and just make life easier. Right. So when we say like he requested a trade, maybe all it is that he requested that trade be done in the winter as opposed to the summer. Right. So after the initial sticker shock of requesting a trade, like you can see and even if it is just he doesn't want to play in Pittsburgh anymore, you can kind of see that too. But if you're the Pirates, you are going to get as much as you can. Look around at the trades that have been made. For Dalton Varsho, the Blue Jays gave up the top catching prospect in all of baseball, plus one of the better outfield contracts in all of baseball in Lourdes Gurriel, right? So Bryan Reynolds is going to cost. Yes. And if I were the Pittsburgh Pirates, it would be pitching. I would not trade Bryan Reynolds for anything less than a potential ace. Obviously, I'm trying to think of somebody maybe in like Tampa Bay, Luis Patino, that kind of name that I would, not that I'm suggesting there's a fit there, but something like that, right? Somebody who has huge upside and is very close to taking a rotation spot at the very least. And then I would keep going. I'd be looking for one position player. I'd be looking for a bullpen arm. I would be asking for the moon because if you're making all these other moves, maybe you feel like you are being competitive. And if that's the case, it's going to take that much more to trade a Bryan Reynolds, I think.
Yeah, you're right. And let's be speculative here. Let's talk about that potential where if they could get a potential ace or at least somebody, for them, it might be an ace. It might be a 2 or 3 starter on the team they trade for. Let's say example, I know that Nestor Cortez was in the possible conversations for the Yankees. Pablo Lopez was in possible conversations for the Marlins. Let's say they get a guy like that, and then they also get another, let's say, just utility player. Let's just put that in the context. Let's say that's what they get. What does that put Pittsburgh in the NL Central? Where does that put them? Does that obviously doesn't make them a 100-loss team anymore? Does that put them kind of where Chicago was last year, around 75 wins? Does that get them to the 80 mark? Where does that get them for next season?
Yeah, I don't think trading Bryan Reynolds is going to get you to 500, regardless of the return. Like the guy plays every day and contributes to the team every day, getting a starting pitcher like a Pablo Lopez every 5th day, right? So even just that alone, logically, I don't see it playing out. And that's even if it was a 1-for-1 type deal, which, I don't think if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm not going for a 1-for-1 deal, even if it is Pablo Lopez. I want more, right? For that very reason. So do I see this is not the trade that puts Pittsburgh back into contention, right? And I think that fans kind of have to kind of realize that as much as they are attached to Bryan Reynolds, the return that they're going to get is going to be huge. But it's not going to be franchise altering and all of a sudden you're a playoff contending team this year, maybe not even next year, right? So we got to kind of hedge our expectations there a little bit. That being said, it's definitely what they've done already is enough to avoid losing 100 games this coming season. So I could see them, maybe 10 games under 500, maybe flirting with 500 for a little bit, certainly maybe beginning to midseason, but I don't see them, ending up certainly with a huge boon in the standings.
Yeah, I could see that around maybe like 72 to 77 games right now as the win column.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair, especially right now. And if that's the case, you had 62 wins last year. So if you could find a way to improve and do good and keep building around your core and and trade away some of these guys like we talked about, yeah, wouldn't be a bad idea.